Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm about to start the show, and I want to make sure that you know about my best-selling book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It'll show you how attackers look at you and then give you the technique to target yourself so that you can turn around and make better defenses, have better awareness, and better plans of action when there's no defenses that you can actually do, like if you're out in public or something. So go get it. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. I promise it'll change your life. It's available wherever books are sold. And for your children, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. It's a book of pictures that have lessons drawn into them by my good friend Danielle Kreiner. And I built the lesson plans that are on teamlittlebigs.com. So you give the book to the children, and then you get the lesson plans at teamlittlebigs.com, and you work together ages 1 through 8, and also for special needs children as well. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. Go get them all, make your homeland secure again, and let's start the show.
The truth has arrived.
My name is Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts. And happy Friday, everybody. It is, terrible weather. I mean, this has been some bad weather across the entire United States. And, there's a lot to talk about in the news. Okay. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm going to get to some of that in just a minute. But what I want to cover real quick is especially Texas. Okay. There's so many lessons to be learned in Texas because of what's going on with the weather and things that have happened and how miserable people are there right now. And it's also a very dangerous situation. So everybody always gives preppers a hard time, whenever they have a show on Discovery Channel about preppers, I always make them look like they're some kind of morons, right? But they're just from the deep South. But preppers actually understand a lot of this stuff, that, the potential of what happens if your electricity goes out. I mean, everybody just thinks because they have electricity. That's the problem with this country, okay? Everybody thinks because they have it, they're always going to have it, right? You're born in, how many of you out there right now, ask yourself this, how many of you were born in a location where there was not electricity, right? We all were. So you think that it's always going to be there. Same thing with water. How many of you have ever had to go without water? And you know what's funny about it is we don't drink enough water, but it's always there for us. We kind of take advantage of electricity and water, and we don't prepare. By and large, I know there's always a few of you out there saying, it's not me. I'm always fully prepared. Okay, good on you. Maybe you can teach some of these other people how to prepare themselves. But really the majority of the people in this country are not prepared for no electricity in winter. They're not prepared for no water, period, anytime. Summer, spring, fall, winter. I got those all out of order, but you get the picture, right? We're not prepared. Absolutely not prepared. We just think it's always going to be there. Just like safety. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but I'm telling you there's going to be an uptick in terrorist attacks. And I'm not talking about the ones that the liberal media is talking about, like for some strange reason, patriots are just going to start freaking out and like committing terrorist attacks all over the place, or white supremacists. It's not happening. It's not occurring. There's always a chance of some weirdo lunatic shooting up a place, and maybe they're white. It happens every weekend in Chicago, and they're usually black. So it doesn't really, those things are going to happen. But I'm talking about a terrorist attack. ISIS is on the uptick in the Middle East. Biden, for some strange reason, wants to make nice with Iran again, as though that's going to do anything. And he's just destroying any relationships we have with Saudi Arabia. And here's the thing about Saudi Arabia is it's a very dangerous country. They make it look like they love the United States and that they partner with us and things, but I mean, all of the attackers from 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia. So there's, there, it's not like we're off the hook there. These things are going to rise. They always come up during Democrat presidencies. And now that the Democrats own everything, you just mark my words on it. Okay. So what does that have to do with water and electricity? Well, safety, I always do a little commercial before the show about my book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. But most people don't even contemplate safety. And because we've been locked down for so long, people have just completely forgot about that. And as kids start to go back to school, there's going to be some kids who lost it over the past year, who just lost it in their brains. I can guarantee it's going to happen. So whether it's electricity or water or safety, we just take these things for granted. And very few people are contemplating these things until they occur. So I want you to start thinking about that. I've talked to people in Texas, and it's just terrible. I mean, they're literally freezing in these homes. Most people don't have fireplaces in Texas. I mean, it's warm there all the time. They just don't have fireplaces. But the water issue, I don't think anybody realized that was the possibility down there. So, first of all, prayers for Texas and for all that's going on down there. That's for sure. And second, if you have relatives or friends down there, you should check on them and make sure they're okay. Now that Biden, he had to be asked by Governor Abbott in Texas to declare a state of emergency. I don't know why that is. I mean, if it's gotten that bad, he should be the one reaching out. I'm assuming that it was Abbott. It was reported that Abbott asked the president, but these things need to be acted upon quickly. One of the stories that most people don't realize is that there's some key officials with the electrical grid there that realized what was happening, and they shut it down. Had they not shut it down in Texas when they did, it would have caused a catastrophic effect of all these different parts of the grid just collapsing. So they saw that was occurring, and they shut it down before it got even worse. I mean, right now it's going to be able to be repaired and turned back on very quickly. But had they not done that, it would have taken months to repair that. So that's good. They were prepared somewhat. I'm sure this was a surprise. But here's the interesting thing about this. Let me say this one other thing about preparation, and we give these preppers grief all the time. The media, all the, people think they're just dumb. But this just goes to show you, folks, it doesn't take a lot to ask the question, what if? What if this occurs? Yes, you live in Texas, but what happens if all of a sudden you get some freak storm? You need to realize that. You may live in a place that's never had an earthquake, but what if it happens? What if it happens? If you live on the coast, what if a tsunami comes? What if it's not a hurricane that causes a tidal surge, but an earthquake off the coast of where you live? Think about these things. What if you're somewhere where a terrorist attack occurs? Think about it. You need to think about these things. Okay. So, now I started to say, here's the interesting thing about this. This is what most people don't realize, is that a large part of the Texas energy grid comes from solar power. If you've ever driven through, I'm not saying solar power, wind power, okay, turbine power. And if you've ever driven through Texas, which I've driven through Texas many, many times, all over Texas, there are giant windmills everywhere. And I actually think they're pretty cool looking, but they're everywhere. And you don't realize how big they are until you get right up next to them. They're huge. I mean, the blades on those things take up like a city block. They're huge. And the problem is they're all frozen, right? So that's one of the reasons why the electricity stopped, is that this green energy plan that they have for the world. And I was watching something on Tucker Carlson the other day where they had a guy was from upstate New York that was talking about this, how the left seems to think that we're going to magically change the entire system from fossil fuels to electricity in 9 years. And we're nowhere close to that. Texas has proved it. Those windmills, so Texas rarely gets this type of ice and cold in this winter storm, but they get it in the north all the time. So I can guarantee you in upstate New York, they're constantly talking about these windmills and these all this different power from the green side, but it's not figured out yet. And so that's the left, and that's Washington, D.C. really, and also many of these state politicians that, just like the Obamacare bill back in the day of Obama, where they said, and the same thing with the bill for COVID that just recently got passed, that Congress says, let's just pass it and then we'll read it. And these things are thousands of pages long, right? Well, that's the way they're thinking this crisis out. And it's stupid, it's ridiculous, but it's typical. It's absolutely typical of the way government works now. They just don't even try to think things through. So prayers go out to Texas, and I hope they get the water to you. Folks, if you have a generator, don't put it in your garage. It goes outside, okay? Don't think that you're going to turn your car on in the garage and sit in there where it's hot. You don't want to crack the garage door because you don't want to let the cold air in. You're going to die if you do that, right? Carbon monoxide will kill you. If you don't have batteries right now, as far as I can tell, 9-volt batteries are not out of stock in Texas. So go get yourself some 9-volt batteries or whatever it takes in your carbon monoxide detectors, and make sure that they're changed, because right now it's very critical. Also, check on the elderly and the stupid, for that matter, and make sure they're okay. Make sure that they're staying warm. I mean, right now there was a guy who froze to death in his recliner. So listen, these are all things that are preventable, these deaths, but not if you're not prepared. You have to be prepared for the possibility of these things occurring. So strange. 2021 in many ways is already outpacing 2020 for just weirdness and death and destruction and misery, which is the other thing I want to talk about. After Biden's inauguration, right, everybody kind of calmed down for just a little bit. Like they got to a point where everybody was like, okay, right now the fight with Trump, for Trump is, he's gone, right? He's not in office anymore. That we didn't win that battle. So everybody started to calm down a little bit. Biden didn't come into office and just absolutely freak out and act stupid and do all these crazy things, right? So he's moving, but he's moving. Yes, he passed all these things, put a lot of people out of work, but he hasn't destroyed the country completely yet. So people have kind of calmed down a little bit. But the weird thing is now, into February already, this weird resurgence of stress has come back. Like everybody took a breath for a couple of weeks, and now it's very strange. It's almost like over 2020, people got addicted to the anger and the stress. And now I find that people in February of 2021 are very nasty to each other, and they're very just no patience whatsoever. And people are starting to stress again. It's almost like anxiety is kicking in, or just this feeling of I'm supposed to be angry, I'm supposed to be upset, and so they just are. So you have to police yourself for that, and you have to watch out and make sure that you're taking a breath, that you're breathing. If you're not out, I know it's cold right now, but you need to get out and walk or exercise a little bit, do some things to lower your stress. I know this sounds totally weird, but you're in a hurry to go here or there and you jump in the shower. Take a few minutes and just sit there and relax. Relax in the shower. Let that hot water calm you down a little bit. See, do things like that to get yourself out of this stress that's going to start coming back up because your body became and your mind became addicted to it over 2020. Believe it or not, the chemicals that have been riding in your brain over a year's period, when that stress is gone or things just slow down, your body will physically desire, as weird as it sounds, it will desire the chemicals that were in your brain for such an extended period of time. It's no different than any other chemical or any other addiction. Anger, depression, whatever, it manifests itself in your mind, and then when that cause and effect goes away, your body is left with, a lot of the times, not always, but a lot of the times, your body is left with a chemical desire or a behavioral desire. Like, you're just used to being that way. So you have to fight against that. And you have to do yourself the favor and do things to help yourself become more pleasant and relaxed. Breathe, exercise, relax. Everybody is getting tense again. And one thing I've definitely have learned in the recent weeks, and I knew this I learned it over 2020. It got really bad over the past 4 years, but really 2020 was really bad, of people wanting to be noticed. People wanting to be, I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know, but it's because people have busy minds or what, but you know, the grifting that was going on in 2020 was out of control. People trying to make money off of the fact that that the election was all screwed up, and after the election was lost, they still had this stop the steal thing going on, and people were all up in arms, and egos got in the way, and narcissism is like kicked in this weird way, and all these things were occurring. It seems to be coming back but it's on a personal level now. And I want to make sure that you see this. I want to make sure that you're aware of it. And I want you to question your own behavior. If you see yourself being narcissistic and really wanting to be noticed, then just stop, pause for a minute, and try to break that habit. If you find yourself getting very aggravated and it's not anything that you weren't able to handle before, stop. Take a second. Ask yourself, why am I so aggravated? If you were a happy person before and now you're like depressed, and stop. Ask yourself, why am I depressed? And what you're probably going to find is that over the past year of stress and heartache and just being locked up like you're in prison, you have been almost institutionalized to be unhappy and stressed, and this need to be noticed, because really for a long time in 2020, we didn't have a lot of personal contact. And now that you're associating with people, it's like a competition to be noticed. It's a competition to be heard. And that is something that we definitely have to fight against, because it will destroy friendships and relationships and businesses. And you have to be aware of what happens when you're in a sustained environment and that environment starts to change. Or maybe it doesn't. You're just in it for a long period of time. You will start to think that you're miserable when you're really not miserable. So we see that with, people who, are hostage, or people who are starving to death, and then they get, then they get food or whatever. There's behaviors that occur. Same thing with drug addicts or alcoholics when, they have to struggle. People trying to quit smoking, or people with eating disorders. Once they get past it and they go, they quit it, the desire is still there. That's because it's not just, it could just be a behavioral thing. They're used to being that way, or it could be a chemical thing in their brain that has changed. It's manifested itself. There's a need for, even though it's ridiculous and doesn't bring you any good in your life, your brain will still desire it. And it's no different than, any other drug. Anger, depression, narcissism, these are addictions. And I do think, and not, I don't know this for sure, but I do think that narcissism, at least like we're seeing it now, it's not necessarily based on hate of oneself. I think what we're seeing now, especially with social media, is the animalistic urge to compete for top dog. And that's kind of manifested itself into this narcissistic type of mentality. I don't know if that's actually true, but we'll have to research that a little bit more and think about that. So, okay, let me move past that real quick because I want to cover this for a second before I'm gonna go on too long today. As you probably know, Andrew Cuomo he's in a bad place right now. When de Blasio tells the world that you're terrible at leadership or you're a bad person, you know you're bad, okay? If de Blasio, and I'm not talking about Blasio, I'm sure he thinks all conservatives are bad or non-communists, but Cuomo is in the same political party. Cuomo and him have had to work together, and he has come out and said that things that Cuomo does is wrong, right? The Democrats are coming out and they're saying as long as the pressure continues on Cuomo, they'll continue to come out and say that he's been very abusive and has threatened many people in the Democrat Party over the years. He has too much power, and he is. I used to think he was a narcissist. I really believe he's a psychopath. He is. And many of the people that work for him are just evil people. They're bad. In the face of this tragedy and all this death, just the way that they act and the things that they do it's bad. It's really a criminal mindset that these people have. So we know that, and we're now seeing that the potential of this to go, which I talked about on the last show on Wednesday, the potential of this to really become something big and maybe get him out of office and maybe even get him arrested, it's actually there. Just like at the beginning of this movement to get Gavin Newsom kicked out of office was kind of like, yeah, okay, it could happen, but probably won't. Well, now it's almost there, right? So these things can happen, but they can only happen when you're unified and you work together. Right. That's why it's working so well in California, because people want him out so bad. They're kind of unified under that thought. It's the same thing with Cuomo. Has to be unified. And one of the things that I've noticed as I've been, helping out with Voices for Seniors and, was really involved in politics over the past couple of years. One thing I've noticed, and I knew this as a child because I saw it firsthand with neighbors when I was a child, but there's some nasty people out there, just mean, nasty people that say mean things, and they're always going to cause drama. But it seems to be very prevalent now. Seems to be a lot of that. And I think it's because a lot of these people just come out of their shell, right? They're bored, they're narcissistic, or they're maybe borderline personality or bipolar or a little bit psychotic, and they are just like on attack mode now. You see it on social media. You see it. Your neighbor may be like that. I've seen it a lot. And we have to watch that and police ourselves, because if you're not the crazy one, don't play into these people. What they do is they will try to goat you into fighting just to get a rise out of you. That's what narcissists do. That's what a lot of these people do. They try to get your energy, steal your energy, make themselves feel good. That seems to be on the rise as well. Cuomo and his weirdos, they're a lot like that. A lot of these politicians are like that. Now, I don't think Ted Cruz is like that, but I will tell you, Ted Cruz, I mean, look, the media, by and large, doesn't have anybody to focus on like they did Trump, right? They vilified Trump for 4 years. Well, it's really 5 years. It was while he was running and still doing it now. They vilified him. They spent every waking moment, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week on Trump and trying to vilify him. What is Ted Cruz thinking in the middle of this disaster in Texas, taking his family to Cancun? Now, he flew back the next day, but the damage was already done. And I don't understand, he should know that the focus is not going to be on Trump anymore, not like it was. And that he's hated just as much as Trump by the left. And they will pounce. Now, the thing that Ted Cruz has going for him that President Trump didn't is that Ted Cruz, by and large, doesn't get drawn into things like the president did. The president could not say no to a fight. And while a lot of that actually turned out to be good for us because it exposed a lot of these people, ultimately, because he bought into it and fought every single time, it's one of the reasons why he got injured so bad from the media. Ted Cruz doesn't do that, but why would he give himself over to them with something as stupid as this? Look, if his wife and daughters wanted to go to Cancun and he has the money, hey, to send them to Cancun. Although I will tell you this, from a security standpoint, Cancun is just as dangerous as regular Mexico now. And I think it was a bad choice. It was a very bad choice. And people in office and their families have to realize, if you are in office and there's a disaster going on in the area where you're at, I don't care if you can do anything to help it or not. If you're in politics, you have enemies. And he should have stayed home. Bad choice. But there seems to be a lot of bad choices going on in politics right now. A lot. Now, one other thing that I want to say before I close out, this is not a real long show today, but some important things that I talked about. But one of the things I want to say before I close out is that, 2022 is right around the corner, folks. And every year there are different offices that you could run for if you think you have something to offer in the area where you live. Whether it be school board. School board is probably one of the most important things that we could do right now. If conservatives and people who understand the reality of what has happened to the education system, that have some, and these people have, that they're out there and they have something, they can step forward. They have something to apply or to help out or to be a part of the school board. Step forward. We need people around the country that are good and honest, moralistic, ethical, and that understand what children need. We need you on the school boards. Okay, we need you in those positions. I want you to think about running for that. If you are around the nation, you don't know how to run for something, you can go to @Gilliam_seal on Twitter, and you can drop me a line, and you can, if you need guidance on that, I can find the guidance for you. Okay. Also, there's going to be another election every 2 years for Congress. I used to think that was too often, but now I'm thinking not. Right? We have the potential to oust the Democrats out of Congress. It would be the greatest thing we could ever do, liberal or conservative. You need to realize that the Democrat Party is dangerous. And quite frankly, if you think you're liberal, you think you're conservative, reality is you want things that are problems to be fixed. I think the Democrats or people who are liberal a lot of the times think that there's a lot more problems than there are, when it's really not government that can fix those problems. It's the people, And a lot of the times, some of the things that the left thinks are problems are not, like the Second Amendment. Most of the murders in this nation are not committed by legal gun owners. They're committed by people who got their guns illegally. And you can do anything you think is going to change that. You can change any of the laws. You could even get rid of the Second Amendment completely. Bad people will still get guns. They will. You're not going to stop that. The biggest thing you can do to stop or to push back on that illegal gun movement and the use of that is to give good people that are the opportunity to carry a gun. And really, if the states want to do anything, they could train those people. They could offer free classes to train law-abiding citizens how to use their weapons and defend themselves legally. But that's probably not going to happen. But you have to realize that 2022 is literally right around the corner, and there's going to be another election for Congress. So right now you're kind of behind the curb if you want to run for something, but you really need to start figuring out who these candidates are and getting behind people who can actually get in there and we can oust the Democrat Party. And I'll say one other thing to all the people around the nation who are in the Republican Party. I'm not just talking about voters. I'm talking about people that work in the Republican Party. You need to get your act together. You need to get rid of people who are there for egos, because there's a lot of that around the nation. I do believe that's one of the reasons why voter fraud was so prevalent and why the Republicans lost in so many places, is because it's filled with jackasses who have no idea. Some strange reason it's all ego. They have no idea what's at stake here. And as we've seen, it's not just the people who are in office, it's the people that work in the Republican Party, filled with people who are, they remind me of when I did protection work, or when I do protection work for some of these big celebrities, and they have their assistants and their little crew that goes and does all these things for them and gets their hotels ready, and then gets the hotel set up, or books their things, or handles them when they go to special events. And they're all a pain in the ass. And they all make, like, you could have a great celebrity and those people that work around them are typically nasty. And that's the way it is with the Republican Party. You have some great people in the Republican Party. You have some great people in office, but there's too many of these knuckleheads that exist in the Republican Party. And first of all, if you're in there, you need to stop and ask yourself, are you doing the job? Or are you feeding your ego? And secondly, if you are a voter and you see this, you need to identify it to the voters and try to get these people out of the Republican Party. And if you're a politician and you see this, make it known to the people so we can start changing this. This isn't a game. This is life and death and the destruction of our nation, and people need to figure that out, and we need to focus on that before 2022 is here and we lose again to the Democrat Party. We're already going to have a problem with voting again, I can guarantee you, in 2022. We're already going to have that problem. We should just be at paper ballots, that's it. Voter IDs, that's it. Why can't we get to that point? Well, I'll answer my own question. Because the people haven't made enough ruckus about it. That's really that's what has to happen, as we can see now. Now, here's one thing you got to realize, whether it's Gavin Newsom in California or Andrew Cuomo in New York, what we're starting to see is that the people are starting to flex against these narcissistic, psychopathic megalomaniacs. And it's actually working in some places. What you need to realize is that 2020 is right around the corner, and that in a lot of ways, especially in the Republican Party, it's not necessarily the politicians, but the people who work in the party. They need to be flexed against, and they need to get their act together. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and I'm out of here.